Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Khổng. Today, we will explore World War I, one of the largest conflicts in human history. Beginning around the 16th century, European nations started developing capitalism and expanding their search for resources and markets. Many colonial powers launched campaigns to conquer territories in Asia and Africa, turning numerous regions into colonies. By the late 19th century, competition among imperial powers had become increasingly intense, especially between established nations such as Britain and France, and rising powers like Germany, the United States, and Japan. At the beginning of the 20th century, Germany had become one of the world's leading industrial powers, but possessed a relatively limited colonial empire. Seeking to expand its influence, Germany formed an alliance with Austria-Hungary and Italy, creating the Central Powers. In response, Britain, France, and Russia established the Allied Powers. Both sides continued to build up their military forces and weapons, making the possibility of a large-scale war increasingly unavoidable. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated in Sarajevo by a member of a Serbian nationalist organization. Austria-Hungary accused Serbia of being responsible for the attack and issued a harsh ultimatum with many strict demands. When Serbia did not fully accept the conditions, Austria-Hungary declared war. On July 28, 1914, Russia, as an ally of Serbia, decided to mobilize its army against Austria-Hungary, Germany, and declared war on Russia and France in support of its ally. Germany planned to quickly defeat France before turning its forces against Russia. But this strategy faced difficulties due to France's strong defensive positions. To avoid direct attacks on heavily defended areas, German forces moved through Belgium and Luxembourg to invade France from the north. This action led Britain to declare war on Germany on August 4, 1914, and send troops to Europe to join the conflict. While the major European powers were being drawn into the war, Japan took advantage of the situation to expand its influence in Asia. On August 23, 1914, Japan declared war on Germany. Officially entering the global conflict, the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East later joined the Central Powers and entered the war. On October 29, 1914, the Ottoman Navy launched a surprise attack on Russian coastal areas, causing the conflict to spread rapidly into a worldwide war. Due to its unprecedented scale of destruction, newspapers at the time described it as the war to end all wars. On the Western Front, after crossing Belgium and advancing deep into northern France, German forces believed they were close to achieving a decisive victory. However, as they moved further into French territory, their advance was gradually halted. At the same time, Russia launched an earlier-than-expected offensive into East Prussia, forcing Germany to transfer troops from the Western Front to the Eastern Front to respond. As a result, Germany's plan for a quick and decisive victory was disrupted. During the Battle of the Marne in September 1914, German forces failed to defeat the combined British and French armies and were forced to retreat. Both sides suffered heavy casualties, but neither gained a clear advantage. After that, the war entered a defensive phase, with a vast trench system stretching nearly 780 kilometers from the North Sea to the Swiss border. Thousands of soldiers died in battles fought over control of small areas of land. On the Eastern Front, Russian forces achieved some early successes, but also suffered a major defeat at the Battle of Tannenberg in late 1914. Although Germany won the battle, it still faced a difficult situation because it had to fight on two fronts at the same time. While the economic and military resources of the British-French-Russian alliance were far greater. In 1915, Germany changed its strategy and concentrated its forces on defeating Russia and forcing it out of the war. German troops launched major offensives in the east, forcing the Russians to retreat and surrender large areas of territory. However, despite inflicting severe losses on Russia, Germany failed to achieve its goal of forcing Russia to surrender. Tsar Nicholas II remained determined to continue the war. By the end of 1915, German forces on the Eastern Front no longer had enough strength to launch major offensives, causing the battlefield to gradually become a stalemate dominated by trench warfare. In southern Europe, on May 23, 1915, Italy left the Central Powers and joined the Allied Powers, declaring war on Austria-Hungary. However, Italy quickly suffered defeats with heavy casualties. In October 1915, Bulgaria entered the war on the side of Germany and Austria-Hungary. allowing Serbia to be attacked from multiple directions and eventually defeated during the period of 1915–1916. Britain and France launched the Gallipoli campaign in an attempt to remove the Ottoman Empire from the war, but they were fiercely resisted by Ottoman forces and ultimately failed. The conflict became increasingly brutal as nations introduced new military technologies, including tanks, reconnaissance aircraft, bombers, and chemical weapons, completely transforming the nature of warfare. The prolonged battles caused enormous losses for both sides and severely damaged the economies of the countries involved. From June to August 1916, Russia launched a major offensive on the Eastern Front and achieved a significant victory in the Brusilov offensive, causing heavy losses for the German Austro-Hungarian forces. With more than 1 million soldiers killed, wounded, or captured, Russian troops regained some territories in Ukraine and Belarus, seriously weakening Austria-Hungary. However, Germany quickly transferred troops from the Western Front to provide support, forcing Russia to halt its advance, and both sides returned to defensive positions on the Western Front. Germany concentrated its forces to launch the Battle of Verdun in an attempt to weaken the French army. The battle lasted from February to December 1916 and resulted in nearly 700,000 casualties, but neither side achieved a decisive breakthrough. Later, British forces launched the Battle of the Somme to relieve pressure on France, but the outcome was also limited despite enormous losses. The year 1916 ended without either side gaining a decisive advantage. Germany and Austria-Hungary gradually shifted into a defensive position, while Russia fell deeper into crisis due to economic collapse, worsening living conditions, and a series of military defeats. These factors increased dissatisfaction among the Russian population and military, creating the conditions for major political upheavals that would follow. In February 1917, the Russian Revolution broke out, with the slogan of transforming the imperialist war into a revolutionary struggle. The Russian people overthrew the Tsarist regime and established a bourgeois provisional government, but the new government continued to participate in the war. Facing increasing isolation, Germany decided to intensify submarine warfare by deploying modern U-boats capable of long-range operations and surprise attacks. This strategy caused severe losses to the British Navy, disrupted supply chains, and pushed the British economy into crisis, bringing the country close to defeat. At first, the United States maintained a policy of neutrality in order to take advantage of economic opportunities by supplying weapons and goods to the warring nations. However, by 1917, the U.S. decided to enter the war, believing that Germany threatened freedom of trade and had attacked American ships. In addition, the revelation of a proposed alliance between Germany and Mexico against the United States increased public support for American intervention. On April 2, 1917, the United States officially declared war on Germany, providing a major advantage to the Allied powers. Throughout 1917, military operations on both sides failed to achieve a decisive victory. Britain and France launched several attacks against German defenses, but were unsuccessful, while Germany and Austria-Hungary also faced serious difficulties. On the Italian front, German and Austro-Hungarian forces launched the Battle of Cateretto, defeating Italian troops, causing tens of thousands of casualties, and forcing Britain and France to send reinforcements. At the same time, after the February Revolution, the Russian army became increasingly weakened, losing discipline and nearly collapsing, leaving Russia unable to continue the war effectively. The uprisings in Russia quickly developed into a major revolution. By November 1917, under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin and the Bolshevik Party, the Russian people carried out the October Revolution and established a Soviet government. On March 3, 1918, Russia signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany, officially withdrawing from World War I and bringing the Eastern Front to an end. Russia's withdrawal from the war allowed Germany to transfer nearly 1-1 troops to the Western Front in early 1918, taking advantage of the fact that the United States had not yet sent large numbers of forces to Europe. Germany launched major offensives aimed at defeating the British and French armies. However, these attacks failed to achieve their objectives, while German forces became increasingly exhausted. Beginning in July 1918, the United States sent hundreds of thousands of soldiers and large quantities of weapons to Europe, directly entering the fighting. With this new advantage, the Allied powers launched continuous counteroffensives and broke through several important German defensive lines. By the end of 1918, Germany and its allies, including Bulgaria, the Ottoman Empire, and Austria-Hungary, had suffered defeat one after another. On November 9, 1918, a revolution broke out in Germany, forcing Emperor Wilhelm II to abdicate and flee to the Netherlands. 2 days later, Germany signed an armistice agreement, officially ending the war. Later, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, forcing Germany and the defeated nations to accept responsibility for the war, pay heavy reparations, and agree to major territorial and military restrictions. World War I left extremely serious consequences. Around 1.5 billion people were affected, more than 10 million people were killed, and tens of millions were wounded. Vietnam, which was then a French colony, also suffered greatly as many young Vietnamese men were sent to Europe to fight and died in a war that was not their own. On the Middle Eastern Front, more than 30,000 Vietnamese people were killed and around 60,000 others were wounded during the war. The Vietnamese population was also forced to bear additional heavy taxes to help cover France's wartime expenses. After the war, Europe fell into a state of severe exhaustion. Many cities, factories, bridges, roads, and other infrastructure were destroyed, while the total cost of the conflict reached tens of billions of dollars. Most European countries became heavily indebted to the United States. In contrast, the U.S. gained significant economic advantages by supplying weapons, avoiding destruction on its own territory, experiencing strong GDP growth, and expanding international investment. The war also profoundly changed the global political landscape. The collapse of empires such as Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire led to the creation of many new nations. The success of the October Revolution in Russia and the establishment of the Soviet state created a new political force, causing relations between the Soviet Union and Western countries to become increasingly tense. Furthermore, economic crises and social instability in several European nations created favorable conditions for the rise of fascism. The continent gradually became divided among communist, fascist, and capitalist forces, becoming one of the major factors that contributed to the outbreak of the Second World War. After the war, no European country could claim a complete victory, as all sides suffered enormous losses in both human lives and economic resources. In an effort to preserve peace, the League of Nations was established, while anti-war movements spread around the world. However, only about 2 decades later, another world war broke out. You have just finished watching the video. Please share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know what you think about this topic. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Khổng channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next interesting videos. See you again. *.